Do you know that there were Asante slaves in Jamaica who united against their slave masters? Just as Okomfo, Anokye, and Osei Tutu united the Asante and fought against the Denkyira, the same spirit of unity and resistance emerged in Jamaica. Asante slaves, alongside a few others, joined forces against their oppressors. These brave individuals were known as the Coromantins, and they were led by the formidable King Tachi, a Fante king who was sold into slavery. Their fierce and determined resistance was so impactful that the importation of Akan slaves was eventually banned. In this video, we will uncover the incredible story of the Coromantins, detailing their courageous struggle against their slave masters and what ultimately became of them. This is a story that every African must watch. Welcome to Black Stories Untold, where we delve into the rich history and powerful stories of our ancestors. Let's dive into this inspiring tale of courage and unity. The name Coromante, also known as Cromantin or Cromanti in Jamaica and Suriname, originates from the Fante town of Coromantins, where captives were held. The Fante people, in alliance with the British, captured their rivals, the Asante, and sent these captives to British colonies such as Jamaica. Meanwhile, the Dutch Comenada Fante allied with the British to capture British-aligned Fante and sent them to Dutch colonies like Suriname. Due to their militaristic background, the Coromantins organized numerous slave rebellions in Jamaica and other parts of the Americas. Their fierce and rebellious nature became so notorious among European slave traders in the 18th century that a proposal was made to ban the importation of Akan people from the Gold Coast, despite their reputation as strong workers. European slave merchants eventually understood that the Akan, while primarily peaceful and hard-working, were a proud and fiercely independent people. They fought vehemently to protect their vast territories from encroachment by other expanding groups and resisted the Dutch, Prussians, and Portuguese. Robert T. Hill of the United States Geological Survey observed that Jamaican blacks, referred to as native blacks or true peasantry, were unique and unlike any other group of their race, even within the West Indies. He described their omnipresence, cheerfulness, and rich folklore, highlighting their dominance in various aspects of Jamaican life, especially on market days. Similarly, another writer, after spending 5 years in Jamaica, noted a distinct difference between Jamaican blacks and other Negro types. W. J. Gardner, in his History of Jamaica, emphasized the diversity of African tribes brought as slaves to Jamaica, particularly the fierce Coromantins from the Gold Coast. Despite their known dangerous character, their superior strength made them highly valued by planters, leading to the rejection of measures to ban their importation. Gardner explained that Coromantins included the Asantes and Fantes, who were strong and active, making them desirable to planters despite their ferocious tendencies, which made Spanish and French colonists avoid them. Brian Edwards, a historian and longtime resident of Jamaica, provided an authentic description of Coromantin slaves, noting their firmness of body and mind, ferocity, courage, and a stubbornness that enabled them to undertake difficult and dangerous enterprises and face death with fortitude. They sometimes take to labor with great promptitude and alacrity and have constitutions well adapted for it, for many of them have undoubtedly been slaves in Africa. Edwards continues, "I have interrogated great numbers on this subject, and although some asserted they were born free, it was later revealed by the testimony of their own relations that they were actually sold as slaves by their masters. Others frankly confessed to me that they had no claim to freedom in their own country and were sold either to pay the debts or to expiate the crimes of their owners. On the other hand, the Gold Coast being inhabited by various different tribes engaged in perpetual warfare and hostility with each other, there cannot be a doubt that many of the captives taken in battle and sold in the European settlements were of free condition in their native country, and perhaps the owners of slaves themselves. This detailed account of the Jamaican Negroes and Coromantins slaves highlights the unique characteristics and historical circumstances that set them apart from other African-descended populations in the Caribbean and beyond. It is not surprising that such men would strive, even by the most desperate means, to regain the freedom that had been taken from them. I do not believe that any further circumstances are necessary to prompt them to action, beyond being sold into captivity in a distant land. I am merely presenting the facts as I understand them. This, I am well aware, was the origin of the Negro Rebellion in Jamaica in 1760. The rebellion was instigated by a Coromantin Negro named Tutu, who had been a Fanti chief in Ghana. It erupted on the frontier plantation in St. Mary's Parish, owned by the late Ballard Beckford, and on the adjacent estate of Trinity, the property of my late relative and benefactor, Zachary Bailey. On these plantations, there were over 100 newly imported Gold Coast Negroes, and I do not believe that any of them had experienced even a shadow of ill treatment since their arrival. Concerning those on Trinity Estate, I can personally attest that they were under the supervision of an overseer known for his exceptional kindness and humanity. His name was Abraham Fletcher, and it should be noted, both in fairness to the rebels and as a lesson to other overseers, that his life was spared out of respect for his virtues. The insurgents had heard of his reputation from other Negroes and allowed him to pass through them unharmed. This fact was confirmed in evidence. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, having gathered into a group, they proceeded to the fort at Port Maria, killed the sentinel, and equipped themselves with as many arms and as much ammunition as they could manage to carry. By this time, having been joined by a number of their countrymen from neighboring plantations, they marched up the high road leading to the interior parts of the country, bringing death and desolation as they went. At Ballard's Valley around 4 in the morning, they surrounded the overseer's house, where 8 or 10 white people were sleeping, and butchered every one of them in the most savage manner, literally drinking their blood mixed with rum. At Isha and other estates, they repeated the same tragic scenes, setting fire to the buildings and canes. In one morning, they murdered between 30 and 40 whites, not even sparing infants at the breast, before their progress was halted. Tutu, the leader, was killed in the woods by one of the pursuing parties. However, with some of the other ringleaders captured and a general inclination to revolt apparent among all the Coromantin Negroes on the island, it was deemed necessary to make severe examples of the most guilty. Of the 3 who were clearly proven to have been involved in the murders at Ballard's Valley, one was condemned to be burned, and the other 2 were sentenced to be hanged alive in irons and left to perish in that dreadful situation. The man condemned to be burned was made to sit on the ground, his body chained to an iron stake, with the fire applied to his feet. He did not utter a single groan and watched his legs turn to ashes with remarkable firmness and composure. After one of his arms somehow got loose, he grabbed a burning brand from the fire that was consuming him and flung it in the face of the executioner. The 2 who were hung alive were granted, at their own request, a hearty meal immediately before being suspended on the gibbet, which was erected in the parade ground of the town of Kingston. From that time until their deaths, they never uttered a single complaint, except to remark on the cold during the night, but spent their days conversing with their countrymen who were improperly allowed to gather around the gibbet. On the 7th day, a rumor spread among the spectators that one of the condemned wished to communicate an important secret to his master, my close relative. The commanding officer sent for me, as my relative was in St. Mary's Parish. I tried, through an interpreter, to let the man know I was present, but I couldn't understand his response. I remember that both he and his fellow sufferer laughed heartily at something, though I never discovered what it was. The next morning, one of them died silently, and the other expired on the morning of the 9th day. At this point, it's worth noting, despite the shock of such inhumane treatment, that we should not rush to reproach the Jamaican planters exclusively. Reports indicate that after a Negro insurrection in New York in 1741, no fewer than 13 unfortunate blacks were burned, 18 were imprisoned, and 88 were deported. Returning to the narrative of Brian Edwards, he continues, "The courage or indifference shown by the people of this country at the approach of death undoubtedly stems, in large part, from their national customs, wars, and superstitions, which are exceedingly savage and sanguinary. On the Gold Coast, every master of slaves holds and often exercises the power of life and death over his slaves for very trivial reasons, without guilt or hesitation. Fathers possess similar power over their children. Their wars are exceedingly bloody and ruthless. Cruel beyond any nation that ever existed, the people of the Gold Coast are known for their outrageous barbarity. For those captives, they do not reserve as slaves. They murder in horrific ways, cutting them across the face and tearing away the lower jaw, which they keep as trophies, leaving the victims to perish in agony. This account comes directly from them. They also shared that when a significant man dies, several of his wives and many of his slaves are sacrificed at his funeral to ensure he is properly attended in the next world. Every Gold Coast Negro I have questioned has confirmed this practice, and I have inquired of many. In a country where executions are frequent and human blood is spilled with little remorse, death must necessarily lose many of its terrors. The natives, aware they have no security even for the day passing over them, seem prepared for and resigned to the fate that likely awaits them. This contempt for death or indifference to life is something they bring with them to the West Indies. However, if they are fortunate to fall into good hands initially and become well settled, they gradually acquire different sentiments and notions. Nature reasserts her influence over them. With the consciousness of security, the love of existence, despite all the evils of a state of slavery, gains a place in their hearts. They feel it, and, due to the force of habitual barbarity, seem ashamed of their perceived weakness. A gentleman of Jamaica, visiting a valuable Coromantin Negro who was sick, noticed that he was thoughtful and dejected. He tried to lift the man's spirits with soothing and encouraging words. "Massa," said the Negro in a tone of self-reproach and conscious degeneracy, "since me come to white man's country, me love life too much." Even the children brought from the Gold Coast show a clear superiority, both in physical hardiness and mental vigor, over all the young people of the same age imported from other parts of Africa. The same firmness and intrepidity seen in adults of this nation are visible in their boys, at an age considered too tender to receive any lasting impression, either from precept or example. I have personally witnessed the truth of this observation. A gentleman of my acquaintance purchased 10 Coromantin boys and the same number of Igbos at the same time, none of whom appeared to be older than 13 years. He had them all gathered and brought before him, in my presence, to be marked on the breast. This operation is performed by heating a small silver brand, composed of 1 or 2 letters, in the flame of spirits of wine, and applying it to the skin, which is previously anointed with sweet oil. The application is instantaneous, and the pain momentary. Nevertheless, it can be easily imagined that the apparatus must have a frightful appearance to a child. Accordingly, when the first boy, who happened to be one of the Igbos and the stoutest of the group, was led forward to receive the mark, he screamed dreadfully. His companions of the same nation manifested strong emotions of sympathetic terror. The gentleman hesitated. However, the Coromantin boys, laughing aloud and immediately coming forward of their own accord, offered their chests undauntedly to the brand. They received its impression without flinching in the least, snapping their fingers in exultation over the poor Igbos. One cannot help but lament that a people so naturally emulous and intrepid should be reduced to such a deplorable state of barbarity and superstition, and that their spirits should ever be broken by the yoke of slavery. Whatever may be said about their ferocity and implacability in their present notions of right and wrong, I am persuaded that they possess qualities capable of, and well deserving, cultivation and improvement. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history, exploring the remarkable story of the Coromantins and their indomitable spirit. It's no wonder that the unity of the Asantes, seen in their fierce resistance against oppression in Jamaica, still reflects in the modern-day Asantes in Ghana. Their rich traditions and cultural heritage are among the best in Ghana, showcasing their enduring strength and resilience. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to Black Stories Untold for more captivating tales of our ancestors. Share this video and let us know where you're watching from. Have you heard any stories about the Coromantins or similar tales of resistance? We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more inspiring stories.